Housekeepers working for motels, hotels, resorts, cruise ships. What is the most WTF, weird, awkward situation scene that you have stumbled upon in work? A story from my aunt who manages a hotel. A lady came in one day and asked if I could check on her 18-year-old son because he had been going through some rough times and she hadn't heard from him. I told her to stay in my office while I checked because I was worried what I would find. I opened the door to his room and he was laying on the floor like a wax figurine. There were needles everywhere, so I assumed he overdosed. I then had to go tell this kid's mom that her son was dead. I was the night manager, and housekeeping told me there was blood on the walls. I went to the room, and OMG, the girl was shooting up something and obviously the blood had sprayed out everywhere. She tried to extend her stay. Turns out she was a crafty prostitute. She would have the first John pay her room through Expedia, and use it all night, then use the money to stay again. She was perma-banned after the blood though. The housekeeping staff at the hotel I used to work at would put all the dildos they found in a box. It was a tradition to wrap the box and give it to the boss, female, at the Christmas party. When I was younger I worked night reception in a realty rundown hotel. I took over night shift from the afternoon shift and was given my handover. As per usual on the weekends we had our late checkouts and wake up calls for airport transfers. Come 2:45 am I called the guest in room 3405 but got no answer. Tried again a few more times and nothing still. Now as I had mentioned, this being such a crummy -3-star rat infested hotel from hell, we had a total staff of 1. So off I went. Up 3 floors with the master key to fetch Mr. Collins. I knocked 3 times and no answer, so in I went. What I saw next will haunt me forever. Across the room in the double-doored fake mahogany closet was Mr. Collins, butt naked in a standing position, knees bent, shoulders slumped on the inside of the closet with a belt attached around his neck, buckle side attached to the closet rail, eyes closed and a great big smile on his face. Dead as a dodo. So first aid training kicked in. I knew it was for nothing. The dude was cold as a well digger's ass. Called the ambulance and started CPR but was obvious the guy was not coming back. Paramedics took over but was pronounced dead straight away. Working in the hospitality industry, you somewhat prepare yourself for grannies passing away in the middle of the night and the odd heart attack here and there but never autoerotic asphyxiation related deaths. TLDR. Dude strangled himself for sexual pleasure. Could be saved. I worked front desk at a hotel and one guy brought in a mini propane grill and started grilling chicken in his room. We found out when the whole hall started to smell delicious. Unfortunately we had to make him stop. My mom was a hotel general manager and I basically grew up in hotels. The worst was a man who hung himself in the hotel room. On Christmas Eve. He'd driven through the night to see his kids for Christmas, and his ex wouldn't let him see them, so he went back to his hotel room and hung himself. My mom is still traumatized over finding his body. After that, she organized a party in the hotel lobby for every Christmas Eve and always invited all the guests to try to get people out of their rooms and lift their spirits if they were spending Christmas in the hotel. Top 3. 1. Painted landscapes across 3 of the 4 walls. In it. Surprisingly talented. 2. Used condoms placed over every light bulb in the room. Discovered when the condoms started to burn. 3. Had an employee give out the wrong keys to a room. Parents gave the keys to small children. They ran ahead and opened the door. Inside was a couple performing BDSM, complete with ball gag and crop. This story is my brother's. But what the hell? True story anyway. He worked in a bigger hotel in the center of Amsterdam. He was a mini bar filler for the rooms. So normally they knock about 3 times before going into rooms. He had 1 room. No answer. So he went inside to start filling up the mini bar. As he goes in he sees a small black case in the middle of the room. A second later a skinny naked guy pops up from behind the wall holding a dildo and stuffing euros in my brother's hand. At this point my brother sees the money and plays along for the moment. The guy opens the briefcase and summons a gigantic dildo from it and starts inserting this massive thing into his now pulsing anus. My brother stands there in slight awe as the guy tells him to wait and stuffs more money in his hands. This all is happening very quickly. Next thing my brother knows is he is holding a lot of money now. The guy has placed himself on a small stool and is begging my brother to start smacking him on the ass with one of those table tennis bats from hell. Black leather with metal pins on them. My brother sees the money again. Starts smacking the guy on his ass like 3 or 4 times before hitting him so hard he falls at the stool. My brother leaves with the money. The guy still begging for more. Brother tells management. Guy's banned from the hotel. I never laughed as hard as I did hearing this story. He did have a lot of money, but still kind of felt like a whore. I worked as a night auditor for a small town chain hotel in the early 1990s. On night a nicely dressed businessman checked in on my shift. He came back up to the desk a few minutes later and rented a few movies. We had VCRs in the rooms back then. One of the movies was The Hunt for Red October. Just came out on video. The evening went pretty uneventful. But the next night when I came to work I received the news. Sometime during my shift he had blown his head off with a large handgun while in his bed. No one heard or saw this happen. And he was found by a maid about 1 PM the next day. And he had bled out. Because all of the maids were Haitian. None of them would clean up the mess. I went into the room and could see the huge pool of blood on the bed and the floor. It took them over a week to clean the room. It smelled terrible. As it turned out, the blood leaked under the floor and under the bed in the adjoining room. That we still rented out. Without knowing there was coagulated blood on the floor. We just kept airing the room out and spraying a lot of air freshener. To this day I have never seen The Hunt for Red October. I was on a cruise to the Bahamas when I came across an unlocked piano. Sat down and made plus $100 in tips before being chased away by an angry pianist. I worked for a small golf resort for several years and this story still burns hole in my brain every time I tell it. So we have these small hotel rooms that contain 2 beds and a bathroom. I serviced fresh towels, eked it for 3 days and everything was normal. On checkout day, 6 men checked out. I seen them meet up with their wives GFS, who weren't staying with them, at the front desk as I was clocking in. I walk into the unit after they left and there was it and blood smeared everywhere. The walls, the sheets, the shower, and even the TV. There were about 20 condoms laying out on the heater attached to the wall. As I was removing the sheets to throw them away 2 butt plugs with condoms still on them flopped out on the floor and one started vibrating. It had to be the most disturbing mess I had to clean up. And when I notified the front desk manager he refused to bill them for leaving such a huge mess to clean up and he said this is a place where people come to relax. If they want to let loose then so be it. I was so mad. Used to work part-time for a cleaning company. We used to find all sorts of it. We used to find positive pregnancy tests all the time but didn't want to congratulate them. Sometimes we knew before the husbands even knew. Things like bongs and other drug paraphernalia in teenagers' rooms. My favorite story to tell is when this sweet old lady asked us to clean because her son was visiting. She was telling us how her son brought home his friend, male, from college. When cleaning the room he was staying in we found a tube of Astroglide. I don't think she knew her son was gay and I sure as hell didn't have the heart to tell her. Since there aren't many replies, I have a few I guess. I'm front desk in a hotel. My favorite was when I wasn't working. I actually just got off my shift when a large wedding party came back late at night absolutely trashed and eventually they all went to their rooms. A while later, the current desk person gets a call to the 4th floor immediately. Turns out, one woman's boyfriend locked her drunk ass out of the room, completely naked. Not one to complain. She decided to sleep it off on the couches we put in the elevator areas on each floor. Still naked, my co-worker went and put a blanket on her and she woke up and said she was going to sue. She peed on the couch and threw up on it, but eventually got back into her room. The next morning she was so embarrassed she ran past the front desk to leave. I worked with a woman who was the head of housekeeping for a large hotel in the area who told me this story. There was this woman and her daughter who were local but checked in the hotel for a few days. One of the housekeepers comes to service the room one morning while the mom is outside by the pool. The housekeeper walks in and finds the girl in bed with blood everywhere. Turns out the girl came to town to have an abortion and mom needed to hide it from dad. The girl started hemorrhaging in her sleep while mom was already outside the room, and the housekeeper actually found her in time to save her life. The housekeeper was too distraught after all was said and done to clean the room. I can't remember if she quit. Another housekeeper was brought in to finish. One of my co-workers was vacationing in Mexico and decided buying weed was a good idea and leaving said weed in a backpack in his hotel room. When they returned to their room, cops were rushing in and out of the room. They began to panic because they were sure they got busted for pot and were headed to a Mexican jail. The cops asked if this was their room and rushed them in. They told the guys to pack up and that they were getting a new room. The room was dark, so my friend opened the blinds. Someone had jumped from their balcony and landed on theirs, thus exploding all over the glass door. Edit. Changed busted with cop to busted with pot. Not a housekeeper, but we went to a Lions game and had the cheap ass of the group plan everything, including the hotel, at $80 a room in downtown Detroit. We walk into the lobby to a 5 feet 3 inches black guy that has a leash and spike chain around this probably 5 minutes, and 10 seconds white girl with pigtails, who's probably 300 plus pounds. I'm no housekeeper, but I do stay in a different hotel weekly and my job is to interact with hotel staff. I've been hearing stories of a guy who likes to sit on the floor masturbating waiting for the housekeeper to come in. Typically this guy films the situation, good or bad, then leaves. The good being that it is rumored the housekeeper sometimes joins in. This happens in hotels all over the country. Supposedly there is a website with all of his adventures. Details are in short supply as many hotel staff do not want to talk about it further. Never worked at a hotel, but delivered pizza there. This one time this guy orders a pizza in the most rundown motel in town. I go out there. He says come on in. I usually will not go inside places but for whatever reason I took one step in. There's a girl sitting in a haze on the bed, like non-responsive staring, wearing only underwear. I got my money and leave, not saying anything. I get halfway to the car and the guy leans out and say hey and gestures for me to come back. I'm a little nervous at this point as he's hanging out of his door, could have a gun in his other hand, and only approach halfway. He comes all the way out with more money, thankfully not a gun, and says here, have a little extra tip. The whore gave me a discount when she saw the size of my D with a big ole smile on his face. I'm not sure if the discount is because it was big or small. Now I knew full well that I shouldn't have touched this nasty drugged out prostitute and sleazy guy money, but of course I did. Not a big thing but something I will always remember. I worked as a housekeeper in a 4-star hotel. It was quite an expensive place and we often had rich guests from the Middle East. This is relevant. The hotel, of course, had a spa area, and it was my duty to close this area around 10 PM, meaning to shoo the last guests out of the pool and sauna, clean everything and close it. One time I went to see if there were any guests still in the sauna, and when I opened the door there was a woman and man. I assumed they were husband and wife, sitting inside. He was naked, only with a towel around his waist, and she was fully veiled, wearing a head-to-toe chador, inside a 90°C sauna. Needless to say I was surprised. I don't care about religious clothing rules, to each his own I guess, but sitting inside a sauna fully veiled surely made me raise my eyebrows a little. Which situation should I share? Alright, so a few girls and myself team up and clean these cottages for a state park. I usually clean bathrooms cause the girls don't wanna and I'd rather do it cause duck it. Just bleach everything and not have to worry about if it in the kitchen is missing. Anyway, cleaning the bathroom when I hear my co-worker gag and tell me to come in the bedroom. I walk in and instantly smell something more foul than a chicken house. Look at the bed and there is a blood stain almost 4 feet wide crotch level center of the bed. I used to work front desk at a resort and once in a while I'd have to be the runner and go around delivering gifts and packages to guests' rooms. The protocol was to knock, say front desk delivery and wait, then repeat twice more. If no one answered then you can enter and leave the package or gift basket on the hallway table. One time after the knocks and calling out no one answered and I entered cautiously and said hello, it's front desk delivery. I'm just leaving a basket on the hall table. And I walked in. No one replied. So I went to put the basket on the table but in order to get there I had to walk past the bathroom. The door was open and I looked in and got a full frontal of a man coming out of the tub. He looked at me. I ran past, dropped the basket on the table and scurried out without looking into the bathroom. He later called the back room and someone confirmed that a runner was sent up to leave a gift. I had already mentioned to everyone what I witnessed. I got laughed at. That wasn't the creepiest, but it was the most embarrassing for me. When I was 16, I worked at a hotel in Las Vegas doing housekeeping. 3 males booked a room earlier that day at about 11 and had checked in immediately. They asked me for extra towels, and thinking nothing of it, I handed it to them. As I continued my cleaning, I get to a room. Standard procedure when a room is occupied or booked is to knock 3 times and then go in. I knocked several times and didn't hear a thing, so I walked in. I immediately saw 2 of the guys 69ing while the other ducked the one on top in the ass. The only thing I was able to say was, "Did you guys want your room cleaned?" They all jumped off the couch and covered themselves in the towels they were using to have a sex on. The manliest one simply says, "Duck, no we don't," and I slammed the door and walked out. I'm 99% sure they checked out a few hours after and only booked the room for their threesome. TLDR. Walked in on a gay threesome and still asked them if they wanted their room cleaned. Hotel maintenance. A dead guy. I had to smash up and scrap out his furniture and put his bed back in storage. I worked for a high-end hotel chain in reservations, and I was told of the story of a Chinese family visiting one of our hotels in Banff National Park. They were in the lobby getting ready for a wilderness hike and had bear repellent spray which they thought was used like bug spray. Welp. They sprayed their young son all over with it, and with that, the shrieks of burning hell. I'm not a worker for a hotel or what have you, but my roommate used to work as one and told me stories where they cleaned up a room once and found someone had it into empty bottles and placed them behind radiators. I used to work in a park with facilities for the campers that had to be cleaned every morning. One morning, the janitor, we'll call him Jose, comes into work and starts by cleaning the bathrooms, and he comes to the men's bathroom. A ranger sees him go in, come back out, put on a hazmat suit, and go back in. This actually wasn't as abnormal as you'd think, considering we'd get a lot of weirdos doing poop art on the walls. Anyways, Jose finishes up and heads over to the next set of campsites. Later that day, some campers find a body in the woods right behind the bathroom. Sure enough, dude had been stabbed to death in the bathroom. Police were not happy with Jose. There's an Indian casino near me that was originally just a casino. They then built a hotel. As a soft opening, they invited tribe members and their families to stay for the weekend, just to work out any problems before they opened to the public. As it turns out, they had to re-renovate an entire floor of the hotel because they found 15 out of the 23 rooms on one floor turned into makeshift meth labs over these 2 days. All of the people that stayed in these rooms were family members of the people that worked at the casino. It was swept under the rug and nothing ever came of it. A lot of regular stuff like destroyed toilets, drunken shenanigans, kebab locked in a hotel safe for a couple weeks, and people passed out in hallways. But the stories I tell most often are vast quantity of clear liquid dripping from the ceiling of the 5 hotel bedroom ceiling. Oh, a leak. Call the maintenance guy. Nah, it was lube. Couple in a double room requested clean towels, bedding. Knock loudly. Announce housekeeping. A guy's voice shouts, "Sure, come in." And when I open the door, he's standing right in front of the door with his girlfriend blowing him. I apologize and start backing away. She keeps right on going. I was kind of envious of her concentration skills. In a hostel made up of mostly dorm rooms with those false ceiling tiles that can be lifted up, we got complaints of noises in the roof throughout the day. Each time I went to investigate, there was nothing in the room and no noise while I was there. This happened several times until I went into one room and found a wonky ceiling tile. So I climbed onto a top bunk and lifted the tile up. Just inside I found an empty half of vodka. I looked around and about 3 feet away is a stinking drunk, stinking backpacker staring at me. He'd been scampering around in the roof like a giant rat for the whole day. I shouted at him to get down and ended up grabbing him by the ankle until he gave in and slithered down onto the bed. People do crazy it in hotels, man. Some of the lost property is pretty good too. Dildos, vibrators, lamp, a cardboard cutout of a male stripper, a surfboard, 2 scuba tanks. Not me, but I imagine this housekeeper had a good story from this. NSFW. Did maintenance for a hotel for a few months. The owner and his wife both were involved in the business. I walked into a room where the curtain rod was torn down. There was the owner and our 18-year-old front desk worker. He gave me $2,000 cash to not tell his wife. Not me, but a customer where I work. The guy is the maintenance property manager of an apartment in the city I live in that is 55 plus only. So many of the occupants are seniors. A couple weeks after Christmas a few people contacted him about a smell that was filling the hallway and some of the apartments on one of the floors. After knocking on a few doors he narrowed his search down to a unit that A. smelled terrible and B. there was no answer. After attempting to contact several times the police were called and upon entering the room they along with the manager discover a human puddle sitting in a chair surrounded by beer cans and cigarette butts. He must have died while a lot of the people in the building were away doing Christmas stuff with family and nobody noticed. They hadn't seen him for almost a month. The body was removed and this maintenance man apartment manager was given the job of making the unit livable again. He ordered a big metal dumpster and filled it with the chair and fluid-soaked carpet. He told me that for almost a month after that flies kept appearing in the unit. It smelled so bad that they would lay eggs basically anywhere. Not a housekeeper, but a supervisor at a hotel. 2 weeks ago I get a call in the middle of the night from one of the bellmen telling me he needs help. I throw on some clothes and run over. I live across the street to find a drunk guy passed out in one of the lobby bathroom stalls amongst the single most foul odor I have ever smelled. Couldn't remember his room or who he was with. Turns out he had decided to take a shit in the hallway and then fell in it, smearing it all over himself and the floor. Ended with me having to call the police and him calling me mean. That was actually the second time a drunk guy pooped in our hallway. Also, a housekeeper once found a prostitute's menu of the services she performed, as well as a bag full of dildos. Well, I used to work at a hotel before I joined the Navy. One weekend, we had a bedridden lady checked in by the police because gang members came to shoot up her house. She stayed for 2 days, and her family would come to get her Sunday. That was the worst weekend ever. I felt bad mostly for the Chinese business intern we had, as he was called in the most by her. She even asked him once to change her diaper. Normally, she had a catheter, but with the situation and all, and that's where we drew the line. We left all requests by her to the manager on duty. Unfortunately, since she didn't get a diaper change in time, she ended up peeing the bed. We ended up having to put the room out of commission for a month and a half. Throwaway course ducket. My time to shine. I wasn't ever a housekeeper, but I worked in a hostel for 1-2 years, so I was in dorms a lot. Some things that come to mind. Taking the nicest, most timid Nepalese, rare to see backpacking, couple to their dorm, walking on full-on group 6 between 4 American girls and 3 Brits I had just checked in an hour previously. The groups didn't check in together and didn't know each other. That escalated quickly. The complaints of noises coming from the group of deaf tourists staying in a big dorm was funny. The deefies didn't know they were in a group dorm with non-deaf people. 2 deaf couples started banging thinking no one could hear their moans. 2 guys turned a smaller dorm room into a gay sex den over the winter. They knew someone who worked there and they got this one apartment blocked off on a floor that was being renovated. Stumbled upon a bed covered in 6 toys and a large potted plant. Took a girl upstairs to my dorm room thingy. Left her passed out as I wanted to go out. Came back and she had pissed all over the bed next to mine. She was still in the pissy bed. No idea why she moved. Walked in on Israeli Army Soldier 6. We got a lot of Israeli Army kids on leave and kids who were about to do their service, so they partied like mad. Saw one of the girls in uniform just getting nailed on the floor of an empty dorm room. To the person at the Marriott in New York near the towers who had to clean up all the blood around Valentine's Day 2013. I'm sorry. Hurry up, housekeepers. We've all started fapping already.